Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on when you are watching this pre-recorded video. My name is Jennifer Widman. I'm with the South Dakota Center for the Book. We're a part of the South Dakota Humanities Council, which puts on the South Dakota Festival of Books and Young Readers Festival, and we're just so happy you're all joining us here today. We wish we could be with you in person, but we are happy to celebrate books and reading in whatever form we can. So thank you for joining us. I do want to mention just very quickly, some of you may have seen this festival printed guide floating around, or you may have seen this image online. In the festival printed guide, if you look at the back cover, you'll see that we have many sponsors who have been very generous in their donations to help us to put this festival together and make it possible technologically this year for you. And you can also find those sponsors on our website, which is sdbookfestival.com. This Young Readers Festival includes about a dozen authors and illustrators of books for children and young adults. And we hope that you'll check out many of their presentations, which you can also find at sdbookfestival.com beginning on October 1st. We wanted to mention too that if you would like to buy books by any of these authors, there will be 2 buttons on that page, sdbookfestival.com, that will take you straight to some local independent bookstores who have stocked these authors' books, so you can buy them online and read the books that you're hearing about today and other days. So we hope you'll do that and support all of these authors and, you know, have some books for home and school. So today's program features Andrea Page, and I want to just tell you a few things about her before she starts to talk to you. Her debut book is Sioux Code Talkers of World War II. And in this book, Andrea shares the military service of 7 Native American code talkers in the Pacific Theater, as well as details about the Buffalo, Lakota values, the 1st Cavalry Division, and pursuit of a Congressional Gold Medal. Page is of German and Hunkpapa Lakota descent. She is a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a retired 6th grade teacher. She lives with her husband in Rochester, New York, which is where she's coming to us from today. And she is also co-president of the Rochester Area Children's Writers and Illustrators Group. And today she is going to talk to you, as I said, about the Code Talkers in a presentation that's called High Five to Our Heroes. So Andrea, welcome and take it away.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I just want to say thank you so much to you and all of the organizers and the supporters for putting this on, because this is quite an endeavor, and you've answered so many questions I've had, and it's just been wonderful, and I'm so really thrilled to be here today. So thank you for all your efforts for continuing to put your book festival on. So, but like you said, we wish we could be there in person, right?
Yes, for sure, always.
Next time, yeah. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen. There we go. I just have to move this bar out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. Bear with me. I'm learning too. Oh, it says it's paused. Can you see it?
Oh, I can't, but I do see that it is, we're not in quite full screen. I can see your whole computer screen right now.
Oh, what happened? Let's see. Yeah, because I got that weird. All right, let's stop. Try again.
We'll try again.
I love technology.
Yep, just a moment here. There we go.
Showing now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have that weird bar on there again. So, all right.
Excellent.
Thank you. Very good. So, this is my presentation, High Five to Heroes, to our heroes. So, you're going to hear a little bit about my book. You're going to hear some of my heroes and about my community, my values, a little bit more about writing, and I'm going to do a little bit of visual storytelling. And so if I just talk a little bit about this slide, a few of my heroes that I actually don't mention in the slideshow. This man right here, his name is Stony LeBlanc, and he was the last surviving code talker that served with my great uncle. And so I had the pleasure and the honor of being able to speak to him at the very beginning of my journey to learn a little bit about code talkers. and just so gracious. And, you know, you have to ask the right questions when you're doing research. So I didn't really know much then. So I wish I could talk to him again now, knowing all I know, because I think I would ask better questions. As I went along in my journey up here, this is my friend, Dr. William Meadows. He and I went to the Capitol in Washington quite a few times. We connected because he was doing research on the Comanche code talkers at the same time I was doing research for the Sioux code talkers. And so he had his book, more of a college level textbook, come out a while ago, and he's got a new one. He's pursued all the code talkers. He's tracking them all down. So he's pursued more and more about all the different tribal groups. And so he has a new book coming out soon. I'm not sure when, and I don't remember what the title is. But, you know, they're both my heroes too. And this is a book cover of a book that I got while researching was Disney Don's dog tags. And Walt Disney created all these little insignias during World War II for each of the different kinds of troops that were out there. And it's just a really cool book if you have a chance to find one. They're kind of limited now, but thought it was kind of a cute picture to put on there. So, okay. Oops. There we go. Okay. So if you want to get ready in class, I'm going to send some information out to Jennifer to get to classes. I have a file that's got a few things in there. There's a coloring page and then kind of like a chart, which you'll see later. And if you don't have that ready, that's okay. If you're watching the recording, just grab a plain piece of 8.5 by 11 paper and something to write with. And we'll be using that a little bit later. While you're gathering those things, I'm going to move on a little and just share a little bit about me and my family. My mom grew up on the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation in South Dakota, and eventually she made her way to college at Nazareth College in Rochester, New York. And when she graduated, she was the first one in our family to graduate with a four-year degree. And it was kind of special for her to graduate from Nazareth College since she was the only Sioux Indian they had ever had in their college. And so it made the newspaper when her parents, my grandparents came, and they had this little session for her graduation. So it was a pretty big deal. Education in you know, my grandfather was very big. My mom was very big on my dad too, on insisting on a good education. It's really important. After graduation, she met my dad and married, well, she met my dad while she was in college, but they married after her graduation. And my dad came from Germany. He came right over. He was visiting his brother here. He didn't really speak any English, so they both spoke different languages, but somehow they got together and they married and they settled here in Rochester, New York. And so that's how I came to be my hometown here in New York State. And so my husband is from this little area here that we live in, and we raised our family here too. But now our kids are all over the place, so we have some fun places to visit, but we love it here. But South Dakota has always had a special place in my heart. When we were growing up, we made lots of trips out to the reservation, to my grandfather's homestead. You know, I grew up with my cousins out there. I still have contact with them all the time. We visit as often as we can. And when my book came out, my husband had a chance to come out, and we had a chance to see most of the state. We drove everywhere, and it was so much fun. And we just loved everything that we saw. It was a great trip. So South Dakota is very, very much a part of my life. And I just have to address a few things up front because I know there'll probably be questions afterwards. One of the things that I did research is the historical documents in my book. And while I was researching, I had a chance to talk to and interview many elders, and I kept asking them, you know, what am I supposed to use in my book? Because I was switching back and forth between American Indian and Native American, and my writing friends were saying it gets a little confusing. And so I kept asking the elders, and they said, use the term that is the best way to communicate with whoever you're talking to at the time. You know, so if you're talking about the historical documents, use American Indian. If you're talking about, you know, something that's kind of current, you can use Native or Native American, or even a term that's come forward now is Indigenous. And I think, I'm guessing, most tribal languages have a term that kind of translates to Indigenous, and I think that's more accurate nowadays. But I took a teaching webinar this summer from the National Museum of the American Indian, because I still think of myself as a teacher even though I'm retired. And they did such a wonderful job talking about this and so many other things. And they have a really cool website. So if you go to that link, it's Native Knowledge 360, and there's so many wonderful resources there for teachers and kids. So check it out. And so we begin. So I like to ask the kids, the students, who do you see when you look in the mirror? And I wonder, when you're reading, do you see yourself in books? These are some questions that I didn't really think about when I was growing up. I wasn't a really good reader. But now that I look back, I realize that I didn't really see a lot of people in books that were like me. And so this is something that's really come forward and made a big difference with our diverse books. And we know that books are sometimes used as windows into some unfamiliar territory. It can be real or imagined. We know that literature, when I was teaching, I was an elementary teacher, so I had a lot of different classes. I was mostly science and math, but I really gravitated to English literature because I felt like I built a rapport with my kids better because of the books that we read. And so making those connections to some bigger experience, a world experience, was really important to me. And so these are some of the thoughts that are coming forward now, and I think they're really important with the diverse books. And so my book, Sioux Code Talkers of World War II, was really peeking into the Lakota culture and peeking into history. And I didn't know, and I didn't really like history when I was in school. I didn't know a lot about World War II at all. So it was really a challenge, but it was really exciting for me when I learned things about my great uncle who served as a code talker in the 1st Cavalry Division. And even that, just asking myself that question, like, why would he go into the 1st Cavalry Division knowing the history? And so all of these questions just kept popping up and popping up and popping up. And when I did more research, I learned a lot, and I learned about myself, and I learned about, you know, me when I looked in the mirror. And I feel like I've grown to stronger on both sides of my family, both of my ancestors, because they both my parents had struggles and challenges when they grew up. So it's just interesting, the research that came out of it, and the trails and the paths and the people that I met. It's really amazing. It was amazing 20 years. It took a long time. So if I talk to, you know, a Native person, Indigenous person, and you ask them, who are you, what's your name, all those kinds of things, you might hear them say their name. So I would introduce myself as Andrea, but a lot of people will start with their traditional name, which is their Indian name. And so my Indian name, I'm saying this for the first time in public, honestly, my Indian name is Hinze Gleshkawi, and it was given to me by my grandfather when I was 16 years old. We had a big ceremony, and it's translated to Palomino, basically at the end. So I've come to be more comfortable with sharing my traditional name. It's not something that we do here in New York, obviously, but at home, I'm asking more questions and learning about people's traditional name there. And I know that people share that mostly first. That's their identity. You'll hear people talk about their band or their tribe. So my family is Hunkpapa Lakota, and that is mostly on the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. That's our tribe that we're enrolled in. But it also talks about the land. So when you say you're Hunkpapa Lakota or Standing Rock, people know exactly where geographically that is now. And so it's really something that's an identity tied to the land. And so another family connection then is when people talk about their ancestors, they usually talk about, you know, who the person was that was the great leader of that whole group. And so our great leader was Chief Sitting Bull. And then my family, both my parents really followed the Lakota values. When I look back, this is what we were taught when we were growing up here. They didn't necessarily call it Lakota values then. They both agreed on raising us 5 kids the same way, which was really a good thing. So our lives and our decisions were based on these kinds of things. And so who are my heroes? When I think about heroes, I have a quick list. Obviously, my mom and my dad. They both came from very poor beginnings. They were both raised on a farm or a homestead with very little of anything. They both spoke a different language and then moved to a new place. I mean, it just, when I think back of how they did that together, it was really amazing, and they're really inspiring, you know, to keep going. They taught me to never give up. No matter how hard things are, don't give up. The code talkers, obviously. While you were talking, I realized I probably should have put this picture in instead. Let me move it up to the camera. But this is the picture that started everything. And that's the 7 Lakota, or 6 of the 7 Lakota code talkers of World War II, the Sioux code talkers. One is missing from the picture, and eventually I found out who it was. Again, more questions, lots of trails to follow. But, you know, finding out what they did in the situation in the Pacific Theater, serving in the 1st Cavalry Division, and just using their language that they were, you know, punished for before in history, and bringing that forward. I mean, there's just so many things that I found that were really intriguing and inspiring. And so my heroes. While I was on my 20-year journey, I met 2 elders that are just my wonderful friends and mentors. And they helped me with all sorts of things. And I can go to each one of them with any question at all. And both of them are so generous and so giving to so many people. And they just step up. And they're not young right now, you know, and they're doing so many things. I mean, we can do this if they are. When I was in high school, I played 4 sports when women could play 4 sports in high school. I was also a runner. And when I was in young teacher, Billy Mills came and spoke at one of our colleges, and I, you know, ran down there to go see him. And his story is just so inspiring. So he's definitely one of my heroes that I look up to. And so this would be the part where when you're watching the recording, hopefully you have a code to go on to www.menti.com and type in the code, and then tell me who your hero is. And you can type in your hero, and then it collects it into a word cloud. If you're at the beginning of this session, the code is alive or working, active for about 7 days. So if you miss that, I'm going to take the answers from the word cloud, and I'm going to post it on my website, on my blog, and I'll give that information out to Jennifer, who offered to send that out. So this would be the part where you could do that and share your information. So after you post that, can you think about why you chose that person as a hero? So when I thought about my list, my short list, and there's lots of people that you could put on there, why are they heroes? Well, again, going back to those traits that have to do with the values. When people are generous and humble, and they're respectful, they inspire. and they're definitely leaders of whoever is following them, which is me. And, you know, how do we know people are leaders? Well, they help make our world a better place because of all of these things. And one of the things that I love saying, because one of my author visits, they use this book in class, Hold Each Other Up. This is a book by Monique Gray Smith, and it's just such a lovely book. And Hold Each Other Up is just, what a wonderful term. So this is a great book to use to talk about those values. Whoops, wrong button. And so some of the research that I got into was really tough research sometimes. And one of the most heartbreaking one was learning about the buffalo. And we know that in the Plains cultures, the buffalo were used for all sorts of things, and they used every bit of the buffalo. Nothing was wasted. And, you know, when I learned more, and these are all some things that I don't remember learning in school, and so that's even more intriguing to me. We know that the US government took over the land, and then they gave permission to people to breach the boundaries. Miners traveled through Indian territory for the search of gold in the Black Hills, California, and other places. And then there were these hunters and trappers that were just allowed to kill buffalo at random and go on these great big buffalo hunts and kill thousands of them at the same time just for sport. And they didn't use all of the buffalo. And so it was really sad for me to learn about these things. And so some of that is part of my book, because as a writer, I have to try and imagine these things. If I'm going to write about it, I have to try and picture it in my mind. How am I going to do this? How can I imagine the millions of buffalo that lived on the plains in the 1800s, especially since they're almost as big as a car. Am I holding it up right? One buffalo is almost as big as that SUV. It's huge. So how do we imagine millions of those? Well, being the creative teacher that I am, I had to come up with something, right? So now that I'm retired, I have time to do these things. And I was texting my friend one day, you know, trying to check the math. And she's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm retired. I'm counting grains of rice. She's like, are you crazy? I said, but I want to do this. So I counted each one of these tiny little grains of rice. Oh my gosh. And I measured out 1 ounce because I figured that's an easy amount to count. And when I counted out 1 ounce of these tiny little grains of rice that day, I came up with 1,500 grains. Oh my gosh, there's so many. And then I wanted to show what that looked like. And so I put them on that little buffalo poster and spread them all out, made it look pretty. It's 1,500 grains, 1 ounce of rice. So then I had to do some math backwards, and I had to figure out, well, some people in history, you know, the estimates were like 30 million buffalo to 80 million buffalo. Well, I wanted to show the biggest number, so I picked 80 million buffalo. And if I let each grain of this rice, like each one of these tiny little pieces of rice was 500 buffalo, how many would that be? And so I figured out that it would be about equal to 80 ounces or 80 pages that look like this, all in a row. That's how many buffalo are roaming the plains. It's so hard to fathom. Even with that picture, it was still hard to fathom. If we, you know, if I would do it probably with my classes, I would make them make 80 of those and put them out, and then they could actually see it. But of course, they can't do that here. So I came up with Plan B. So, oh, I forgot I have to click on here. I took the 80 ounces, which is in that little container, And then I put it into a pourable container. So this is the pitcher with the 80 ounces of rice, 80 million buffalo. And I just want you to listen and hear how many that is. Oh my goodness. Here we go. Running around on the plains in big herds. Oh my gosh, it's still going. Woo. Wow. That's a lot of buffalo. See, it fits back into the container. It's a lot of buffalo. Oh my gosh. Well, here's the sad part though. Oops, sorry. Get that out of the way. I don't want to spill it all over my room. Here's the sad part with that is by the end of the 1800s, in 1890, they did count the number of buffalo that were left. And that's how many were left. One tiny little grain, about 500, maybe two grains of rice out of that whole pile. That's what was left at the end of the 1800s. That's so sad. And sometimes you have to read about, the sad, challenging things. But then when I was getting ready to launch my book, I did a little bit of research because I wanted to find out more about the buffalo. And I found out a story of two women who were Native American. They were married to some farmers or ranchers. I don't remember their names. I did write about it on my website, but they kind of convinced their husbands as they were listening to the moaning and the groaning of the little calves on the plains out there. They lost their moms. They convinced their husbands to go and corral up, gather some of the calves that were left behind. And from that, they started building a herd, and they built more and they built more. And eventually, I think there were a few thousand that were sent to Yellowstone Park. And those are the ones that are roaming today. So these two ladies would be considered heroes, and their husbands, because they saved a whole species from extinction. So out of the bad, there's always some good if we can find it. So in school, that was a picture of me at my desk, and we were asked to share, a favorite book. Well, I have so many favorite books that I read with my classes, my sixth graders. I read a lot of picture books with them and other books, and I just couldn't pick one. So I plastered my whole bookshelf with a whole bunch of them and took the picture. And so I want to share a story with you today. It's called Yee and the Sick Sap Man. Now I have to change the sharing here for a second. Hopefully I do it right. Did that come up?
Yep, it's
okay.
there.
Okay. I have to move this bar out of the way then. Okay, full screen. How's that look?
Looks good.
Okay, good. So you may have heard of an author named Joseph Bruchac, and I am using this story with permission from him. And he wanted me to explain to you that when he was a teacher 50 years ago in Ghana, he met a Ghanaian poet named Kofi Awunar, and he learned a bunch of Yee stories from him. And so this story comes from the nation of Ghana and its people in West Africa, and it's listed in Joseph Bruchac's book, Tell Me a Story, which is about storytelling. And so this is the part where we know that oral storytelling is a big part of the culture in indigenous cultures. And it's a big part of learning lessons all over the world. Obviously, this is from West Africa. So you're going to hear some of the setting through some of the detail that are a little different than in the United States. So this is just a funny story. I like this story. Oh, there we go. To learn all the buttons again. So this, if you downloaded the page, it looks like this. And so what I would like you to do with that 8.5 by 11 paper is, if you have a plain piece of paper, what you would do is just fold it in half and fold it in half again, so that when you open this up, you have 4 boxes. If you downloaded this from the internet, the 4 boxes are labeled already. If you're using just a plain piece of paper, this one would be box 1. And you can just put the numbers. This would be box 2. This would be box 3. And this would be box 4. And so one of the things that I love doing with my students is just having them listen and do a little sketching. Sketching is a rough draft. We know that. And so you can use symbols, you can use little stick men. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It's not going to be final copy by any means. It's just what's happening. What do you see in your mind as you're listening to the story? And you're just doing a quick sketch in each of the boxes. And I'll let you know when we're switching to the next box. Okay, here we go. The story of Yee Yee. Now, I'm not a professional storyteller. I'm a reader of a story. So I'm reading and I'm sharing with you digitally. Yee Yee the spider was a farmer, and he had a very big garden with all kinds of food growing in it. Yams, breadfruit, peppers, tomatoes, orange trees, and pineapples all grew in his garden. He had a wife and many little children, but Yee had a dangerous flaw, a tragic flaw. He was very greedy, and he didn't want to share any of his garden with anyone. So when the night came, he sneaked out of the house during harvest time and went to the garden, and he collected all the ripe fruit and vegetables and gobbled it up for himself. The next day, when Yee Yee went out with his wife and children to the garden, they found out that all of the ripe fruits and vegetables were gone. "Whoa," Yee Yee said, "this is terrible. A thief has been in our garden. And if I find out who did this, I will beat him." Of course, Yee Yee did not find the thief. And every night he sneaked out to the garden and ate up all the ripe vegetables and fruit. And that's box number 1. We're going to box number 2. Mrs. Spider was very hungry, and her many children were getting thin. And so she went to seek help from her grandmother. "A thief is stealing our food," said Mrs. Spider. "My poor husband, he works so hard to feed us, and then this happens. What am I to do? Yee's been trying to find the thief, but that thief is so sneaky. What can you do to help us?" "Hey," Mrs. Spider's grandmother said, "the thief is certainly tricky, but I am certain that Yee cannot catch this thief. I have a plan, but it is a special plan for only you and me. Can you keep a secret?" Mrs. Spider agreed. And then her grandmother told her what to do next. "We're going to take these 3 sticks, and we're going to go over to that tree, and we're going to roll those sticks into the sap and gather that sap into a nice ball on each of the sticks. But be very careful because it's so sticky, you'll get stuck." Mrs. Spider did as grandmother said, and then she and her grandmother went into the garden that evening after Yee had gone home. They stuck the 3 balls of sap together, and then they found some stones nearby and put them in. They made it look like eyes. And then they stuck a peanut there for the nose. And then they found some of those cowrie shells down there and put it in for the mouth. and Yee Yee's old clothing, a cloth they draped around, and it actually looked like a real person. Grandmother said, "He will guard your garden." Next box. At night, when everyone was sleeping, Yee Yee slipped out and into the garden. He was so hungry. He gathered mangoes and papayas and coconuts and oranges and yams and tomatoes and peppers, and he made this huge pile. He said, I think I'm forgetting something. The bananas. And he goes over to the banana tree, and he's startled and jumps back. "Who are you, and why are you in my garden?" he shouts. The Sap Man said nothing. "If you do not answer me, I'm going to punch you in the eye." Of course, the Sap Man said nothing. So Yee Yee went and punched him in the eye, but his hand got stuck in that ball of sap. "Let go of me," said Yee Yee, "or I'm going to punch you in the other eye." Again, Sap Man was silent, and Yee Yee punched him in the other eye. Now both of Yee Yee's hands were stuck. "Stop grinning at me," said Yee Yee, "or I'm going to kick you." But that cowrie shell grin, it didn't change. So Yee Yee kicked him, and he kicked him again, and his feet were stuck. Now, Yee Yee was wrestling with the Sap Man all night, but he couldn't escape. And now we're on to box number 4. When the next morning came, Yee Yee's wife and their children and all the people in the village wanted to see who was the thief, and they went to the farm. And there they found Yee Yee stuck in the sticky sap and this great big pile of ripe fruit and vegetables next to him. "There is your thief, Grandmother," Spider said. It took a long time to get Yee Yee unstuck. Everyone was laughing and making fun of him, and as soon as he was freed, Yee Yee ran away. He ran back to his home, and he was so ashamed. When he got there, he jumped up into the highest corner, darkest corner of the house, to hide. And you will find Spider there to this day, hiding in that deep, dark corner because of his shame. Oh my gosh. So I imagine him just with this sticky Sap Man and just getting all and so confused. And so I'm just going to share a little bit of my sketches just so you can see. It's just a quick sketch. Here's box number 1. This Yee Yee the spider and the farm. He's a farmer and a dad, but he says, "It's all mine. It's all mine." He's so greedy. And the next one, whoops, number 2 is Mama Spider with all her little spiders. They're so sad, and they go ask for help from Grandma. And box number 3, Yee goes out at night and he piles up all the food. So I just use these little circles for the food. And then I kind of tried to draw the Sap Man that I imagined in my mind. And then him all sticky at the end, getting found out, and he takes off into the highest, deepest corner to hide. So I hope that some of your schools that are watching this have Bunsy. This is what I'm using as Bunsy. And if you do, you can post the kids' drawings on a board. And then if you wouldn't mind sharing the link to the board for me, because it would be so nice to be able to see what the kids were imagining in their mind. I just love doing this with my own students, and everybody did something so different and so fascinating, and they all learned from each other. And if you don't have Bunsy, maybe your classes use Flipgrid, and maybe the teacher could share a link with me there. It would be nice to be able to see what the kids got out of this story. one more. So if you think about the themes or the lessons about life that you're trying to get across in storytelling, this story really talks about generosity and wisdom and fortitude, that never give up attitude. And if you think about Spider, Mr. Spider, Yee, he was left all alone without anything that he really wanted. He wanted food, all to himself, and he was left all alone in the deep, dark corner. And so what can you learn from that? Well, selfishness and greed and anger don't get you very far. And you're going to be by yourself. Grandmother's wisdom. She solved that problem so creatively. She used her talents to figure out how to help someone. And so what's the message? Well, you can say wise leaders think of others and use talents to overcome challenges. And I'm sure there's many other themes. There's usually several themes that go along with stories, but it's just neat to learn in this way with storytelling. I'm gonna exit from here. I have to go back to the PowerPoint. How are we doing? Did it come up?
There it is. I see it.
All righty. So the last question then I have from Yee the Sap Man is, who was the hero in the story? If we think about the values that we talked about earlier and why heroes are who they are, who do you think the hero ended up being in the story and why? That'd be interesting to hear the conversations in your classroom. So the next part of our hero journey, after we identify heroes and we figure out why they're heroes, how do we then recognize them? And so there are so many different ways in our culture that we recognize heroes, and you may do this too in your families. I don't think these are completely ours in Lakota culture. I think other families do this too. Other cultures do this too. Obviously, we tell stories. We have medal ceremonies and we give away gifts. I have here when my one of the things that happened when I was writing my book was there was a bill in Congress that people were putting through. At the time when I first started out, people only really knew about the Navajo code talkers because there were over 400 men that were trained and maybe served as a Navajo code talker in World War II. They were also in the Pacific Theater. My great uncle, there were only 7 men in his group. And there were other groups like that. The Comanche had, I think, 15, and the Choctaws had, you know, about the same, 16 or 18. So there were very few left behind to tell their stories. So once people started figuring out that all these other tribes had code talkers, they too wanted to get recognition for them. And so there was this bill that started in Congress, and I think around 2000, people started collecting information. So a lot of my research went to that. And eventually, through 3 Congresses, we did finally get the bill passed into a law. And when it became a law, it was called the Code Talker Recognition Act. And then there was a huge ceremony where 32 tribes, I think that was the number, in 2013 received Congressional Gold Medal for their Code Talker service. And so this is our tribe, my Uncle Johnny's Code Talker Medal. It's a little tarnished because I let the kids touch this one when I go to author visits. But each one has a front and a back. So this is the one specifically for Standing Rock. But there were 32 different tribes, so everybody had their own design. And this is the Comanche one. And it's just so interesting to see what other tribes put on theirs. And I'm planning on collecting more of them. These aren't gold, by the way. These are bronze. But the gold medals, when we held them, we actually got to hold ours. it was really heavy. Gold's really heavy metal. But that was just such a wonderful day. 217 silver medals were handed out that day. We came together. I think there were over just about 1,000 people from the 32 tribes that came together in Washington. It was amazing. It really was. It was one of the best days. So going back to recognizing our heroes, when military people come home, often there's a lot of celebrations, powwows, songs are sung and made for these specific groups. There are awards given for bravery and valor, gifts are given and giveaways. But other people that are heroes too, that you may have remembered recently, are people who are trying to protect our natural resources. And so water protectors now have, a few books out for them, and some people, young people, are getting recognized for their hard work with the environment. So writing and telling these stories is just one way to really recognize our heroes. And that's what I hope to keep doing too in my writing journey. Is right now I have quite a few books that I'm working on in various forms of revision, and most of them are about people that inspire me, my heroes. So hopefully you write about things like that in class too. And so we bring it around to a full circle. A circle is a really important symbol in Native culture, as well as the 4 directions. Wheel, you might see the colors of the 4 direction wheels being slightly different spots depending on the tribe. This is the one that's from the cover of my book. But my question to you now is, now that you've identified some heroes and you've identified some values, and how does a leader become a leader, and we even learned about how not to be a hero, how are you now going to take that and move forward? Can you look in the mirror and see yourself as a hero or a leader someday? I hope so. I always, enjoy hearing what my former students are doing with their lives. And I've always been hoping for, to hear more about doctors and a lot of teachers and people working with sports. And there's just so many scientists, and I taught for a long time, so there are a lot of kids, but I love hearing that. And I want you to see that in yourself in the mirror. Can you listen respectfully and hold each other up? Can you notice good deeds? Can you recognize others who inspire you? Can you use kind words with other people? Can you be a leader in those things? Can you remember and share stories of people that inspire you with bravery and compassion and perseverance, that fortitude, that don't give up attitude? Can you encourage others with the wisdom that you've learned today? That's my hope. So take a look in the mirror and see yourself as a hero and a leader. That would be awesome. And so I just want to give you a high five. Woohoo! Good job. And I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing, I hope it works out, hopefully seeing some of your sketches and learning about you and how wonderful you are. So high five, good job. I love this picture. Who doesn't love little puppies?
So cute.
Yeah.
You have to love a little puppy.
Yeah. So again, please share links to your Bunty boards or your Flipgrid pages or whatever other new technologies out there I don't know about. I would love to see the kids' work. And thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of the South Dakota Book Festival, even virtually online like this. I really enjoyed getting ready for this and sharing a little bit about me and my heroes and my book with you today. So thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Andrea, for all of your work and for all these wonderful ideas and stories you've been sharing with students today. So we appreciate it.
My pleasure, yeah.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to say goodbye, and perhaps you can keep thinking about all of the ideas about heroes and values that Andrea Page shared with you today. So thank you all for being here, and we will see you all later.
Good luck with your school year. And to all you teachers out there, oh my gosh, I know how hard it is that you're working right now. And I just so appreciate you working with our children and keeping them inspired and safe. And you keep safe too.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.